Hey everyone, welcome back, and today we're talking about sugarcane farming, because I've noticed a sort of big issue within the professional sugarcane farming community, and that we're sort of pretending like there's only two ways to harvest sugarcane, and that's either with our fists or by piston or flying machine or whatever. So, in order to address this tragic oversight, today we're going to be essentially farming sugarcane with explosives. Okay, that's enough of an intro, let's get straight to the point. We have a bunch of explosives in Minecraft, so how did I decide on using end crystals to farm sugarcane? Well, the exact reason is because, specifically, it levels out the sugarcane like this, perfectly trimming it at the exact right height. And the reason this happens is because when end crystals are spawned in, usually on top of obsidian or bedrock, the explosion origin actually originates directly from the center of the very bottom of the crystal's hitbox. For a better visual representation, if you imagine that this is the end crystal's explosion center, it's directly flush with this obsidian surface, which means all the explosive lines that actually break blocks only have a choice to exit in this 180-degree arc. If any block tries to be broken here, it's impossible to draw a line from this explosive center to this block without intersecting the obsidian surface. This is not for the case for TNT because the explosive center is actually raised a little bit from where the TNT sits, so the rays actually have a chance to exit a little bit downwards at an angle and intersect blocks along this line. In actual practice, this is what that sort of looks like. This mechanic is used extensively in my end crystal tree farm, which I designed a while back, where as you can see this obsidian surface is completely in line with all other redstone components, so nothing gets destroyed except for the tree. So now let's actually build a sugarcane farm. I guess the next question I had was how far do I space apart these end crystals? I know that I want to build them on top of the water sources, as you can see here, so that we don't actually cost the space for sugarcane. But how far do I actually want to space these end crystals to maximize my yields? I genuinely thought this would actually be a complicated question because I thought there would be a lot more variance in how sugarcane is destroyed by the end crystal. So I blew up a bunch of sugarcane and graphed it on this sort of three-dimensional violin graph. And the results aren't that great because it's just fairly consistent, being this whole pillar. What that means is essentially we can convert it all to sand, and the height of the sand essentially shows how often that piece of sugarcane was broken. After many repeated generations, this is essentially what the stack looks like, and anything about this layer was pretty much guaranteed to be broken. So I just highlighted all the water sources that I thought would be touching any of these guaranteed blocks, and this is how we get our individual end crystal tile. To recap, what this essentially means is anything in this new blue tile zone that I've created is guaranteed to be broken by this end crystal in the center. So if we tile these together, then hopefully we shouldn't get any boundary lines where sugarcane are sometimes not getting broken by the crystals. And then after a little bit of fiddling, you get this lovely tiling pattern, which perfectly mimics that of a square tiling pattern if it was rotated at 77.47 degrees. Very fun. Okay, now let's address some actual logistical challenges. How the hell do we even get the end crystals into the field in the first place? When you actually consider the space we're working with here, we've got sugarcane on pretty much all sides of the potential end crystal location. So at first, the only option I thought of was to go straight from above. This becomes even more difficult with the fact that building anything above the crystal puts it in line of sight for its explosion, meaning you need to build a sufficiently large enough blast shield in order to do that, and the only way to reach through it is to put an ender chest and place directly in the gap. So you have to come up with a super weird alignment to get into a minecart, which then allows you to very precisely place the end crystal between the ender chest and the obsidian. At least that's what the solution would have been, had I not realized a very silly fact I had forgotten about a long while ago. You can actually place end crystals on obsidian from below. For some really odd reason, Mojang doesn't actually care if you place the end crystal on the top of the obsidian, but rather clicking the obsidian block from basically any perspective allows you to place the crystal just fine. This isn't exactly an immediate fix though, because you still need to plant a hopper minecart underneath the sugarcane field in order to pick up all the sugarcane, which means we've got an entire layer of rails right here that we need to get through to put the end crystal through. This actually isn't that much of an issue either. All you have to do is simply push up the minecart through the rails using this trapdoor setup here, and that allows you to very easily place the end crystal despite the fact that you've got this entire collection system on top. I'm not going to get into too far about detonating the crystals. It's really simple. All we have to do is just position a dispenser sufficiently high up and get it to shoot a snowball at it. Congrats, you now have all the knowledge required to build a fully fledged end crystal sugarcane farm. Now all we have to do is just figure out how to put all of these ideas together into something that doesn't blow itself up. Arguably the first thing to address is figuring out how to send end crystals to every location in the entire sugarcane farm. This can be done pretty easily by hooking all of the locations up in this big zigzag, which you can see in black stained glass here, but there is actually an issue that I forgot to mention. See, I had got pretty much all the way to this point of setting up the entire farm and figuring out how to tile it, and I completely forgot the fact that end crystals happen to destroy other end crystals. All these end crystals that are next to each other actually can't explode at the same time because they're just going to break each other. At first I thought about spacing them further apart and dealing with the fact that some sugarcane just wouldn't be broken very reliably, but then I had a different idea. If you've been paying attention, you'll notice that only every other end crystal has been placed every time this thing cycles around, and that's essentially the key. The end crystals won't break each other if they're placed in a checkerboard pattern, so I just essentially installed a module to deactivate and activate these end crystal placing modules in accordance to that checkerboard pattern, and just triggered the entire thing twice as fast to accommodate for the fact that it would only break half of it each time. The only other thing worth mentioning at this stage was the hopper minecart tracks. The thing is that the reason there's actually 3 hopper minecarts is because if I chose any less, then it would actually take too long for the hopper minecart to return back to the station and pick up all of the items on its track before the items actually started despawning. This is also something that could be partially remedied by making the track layout a bit more efficient and not having all this empty space in the corners and sides, but I'm also actually incredibly lazy, so I didn't do that. I've also just copied the water layout to do the redstone blocks because it happens to work, and right here where we actually have componentry and we can't install a redstone block every other block, I actually just put levers on top of the mangrove roots. Alright, so that's all the mechanics explained. Now let's get into the rates and talk about exactly just how this machine manages to lose 88.47% of all sugarcane harvested. All of this insane sugarcane loss that we're seeing all comes down to this idea of drop chance for blocks when they're broken by explosions. The thing is that TNT is hard-coded to have an 100% drop chance, meaning that if we blow up, for example, 8 dirt blocks with it, we should expect to get 8 dirt blocks in return. However, for every other explosion in the game, this is calculated through an equation that looks like this: 1 divided by the explosion power. So for creepers, the explosion power is 3. That means that there's a 33% chance that any block broken by a creeper's explosion will actually drop. And as explosions get stronger and their explosion powers get higher, it actually becomes less likely for the explosion to actually drop any blocks. For end crystals have an explosion power of 6, which means that if I place 32 dirt blocks down here, for example, and blow it up, I actually only received 4 dirt blocks in return, which is actually on the lower end of things. Maybe 5 or 6 might be more likely. What you should take away from this sequence is that end crystals having a 1/6 chance of dropping things, or about 16%, are immediately established as the least intelligent method of breaking blocks compared to the 100% drop rate of TNT, or breaking it with your fists or pistons like a normal person. Now, how our supposed 16% expected drop rate went down to 11.53, I actually have no idea. The way I got this number was by conducting 7 tests in which I allowed the sugarcane to grow fully, then destroyed all of it with end crystals, then picked up everything with minecarts, making sure no items despawned or were broken by explosions. Here were the 7 tests. I'm not going to go through them all, and then I averaged them to get about 12 stacks. When comparing the 12 stacks to the absolutely insane 104 stacks that we should have gotten had we actually built a farm that doesn't use end crystals to break the sugarcane and pistons like a normal person, you get a yield percentage of 11.53%. I'm convinced there's got to be some sort of dark magic consuming the other 5% of sugarcane that we should be able to be picking up, because I have no idea where the hell that sugarcane is going. Something to note is that this hilarious metric that I've prepared doesn't actually even measure how much sugarcane we're producing per hour, but rather how much sugarcane per sugarcane. Because remember that for this farm, the drop rate isn't guaranteed to be 100%, and that's what we're actually measuring. But I guess it doesn't matter anyways, because we've completely glossed over the fact that this thing consumes about 49 end crystals every time it fully harvests itself, making its actual rates kind of not even worth talking about anyways. And that's about it. We've taken this absolute dead-end idea and optimized it as much as we can. This is essentially like taking jet thrusters and trying to attach them to a wheelchair, given how garbage of a foundational idea this is, but the fact that we managed to still produce something even slightly viable out of it. By the way, make sure to check out my other videos if you like this one, considering stupid, inefficient, and more or less useless pretty much encapsulates all the things that I make on this channel. Oh, and also make sure to subscribe, because I like really big numbers. Also check out the Discord, it's in the description, and bye bye.